Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 180 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I am your host, Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and author of the book From Letters to Leaders, Creating Impacts on Your College Campus and Beyond. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring fraternity and sorority leaders together. Fun fact, we are going to be talking about Pepperdine University in a little bit, which is a beautiful campus for sure. Another campus in California that you should check out because it is just so spectacular, the University of San Diego. I went there to do an expansion proposal for my fraternity a few years back. We were successful in getting the expansion project, so it went very well, but I was blown away at the stunning views, the palm trees, the weather, the architecture on campus, and just the ease of getting around. So it would be really hard for me to go back to the East Coast after going to school at a place like the University of San Diego or even Pepperdine for that matter. So let's meet our guest today, trained in mindfulness-based stress reduction at Brown University. She is certified in yoga instruction, and she's carrying a background of work with hundreds of individuals across the world. Britt Turpack draws not only from personal experience, but also years of mental health research. Her goal is to bring her infectious spirit to audiences everywhere and reveal her powerful 3 steps to managing daily challenges, reducing work-based stress, and also boosting success. She is a mental health advocate. She is an educator and a TEDx speaker. Welcome to the show, Britt.
Oh my gosh, Michael, thank you so much for having me. That was quite an introduction.
Listen, I'm available if you want to hire me and just do the intros for you on campuses.
I was about to say, can you open for me?
I mean, I'm for hire.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
It's great to have you on the show, and as we were talking about before, I think we don't talk about mental health enough. So I really want to be intentional about bringing on mental health speakers and educators like yourself to talk about this on a regular basis because it is just so important. So first and foremost, thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. And thank you for acknowledging that. And thank you for creating a space that, I can come on here and have this conversation with you because, mental health and prioritizing our mental health is imperative, regardless of whether you live with a mental health condition or not. We all have mental health, and 1 in 4 Americans live with a mental health condition. So if it's not you, it's very likely that it's somebody in your community, a loved one that lives with a mental health condition.
No question. I mean, we always talk about our physical health. We talk about going to the gym and working out and all of this, but how come we're not talking about mental health, right?
Brain fitness.
Brain fitness.
Brain fitness.
It's important. So I totally agree. We need to talk about it some more, but I want to make sure our audience knows your background. I think that's important. You decided on Pepperdine University for your undergraduate experience. So I'm wondering, why was Pepperdine the right place for you?
Why not? It's on the beach. You said it yourself. You were like,
it's gorgeous.
San Diego, Pepperdine. No, truthfully, I wanted to go to UCLA. Well, back up. I'm from Pennsylvania. So I knew I needed to be West Coast by the beach. I wanted to go to UCLA. I did not get into UCLA. I actually didn't even get into Pepperdine right away. I got into UC Irvine, and then I transferred from UC Irvine up to Pepperdine. But I'm a beach baby at heart. So I knew that education was my way to get where I was supposed to be.
Wow, I'm jealous because I mean, I don't even know how I would go to class with those kind of beaches, in my backyard. I mean, I see students literally living on the beach and I'm like, you actually get up and go to class with that view?
It was really challenging. 2 things on that. First of all, I never took the view for granted. Like, I would walk out and look on the lawn and just be like, I'm in awe. I'm in awe of all of this. It was like I was seeing it for the first time every single time. It just hit a really special place in my heart. But something that was funny, given that I was from the East Coast, like most of my friends went to Penn State, which huge school, 60,000 undergrad, dealing with real weather weather, climate, foot of snow, trekking across campus. I ended up at a school where it would rain and people were like, I'm not going to class. I was like, what is this? It's 55 and there's a cloud in the sky. My friend at home, I'm like, there's snowshoes on. But yeah, I guess that was the beach culture.
Totally the beach culture. I love it. And you also joined a sorority at Pepperdine. You joined Delta Gamma. So why was Delta Gamma the right place for you?
DG was the right place for me. Just, I think it was the group of people that were, where I felt I resonated most with that specific community. And I know we're joking around a lot, but tying everything in, college is where my mental health conditions came up for me. And at the time, and a lot of times when we are in crisis, we actually don't know it. Hindsight is 2020 and everything makes sense. But when you're in the midst of something, you're like, this is sticky and doesn't feel good and things are challenging for me. So I was definitely searching out spaces that felt like home because I needed that. And I think DG was just that perfect fit.
I'm so happy that you had DG there to support you. I think that's so incredibly important for so many students. It certainly was for me in the fraternity experience as well. And you're also a school-based yoga teacher in Culver City, California. So why are you so passionate about bringing yoga into schools?
That is a great question. Thank you. I am a school-based yoga teacher, but I'm not really defined by any one thing. I like to loosely consider myself as a teacher in general. It comes out in a lot of different ways in the speaking space, in the educational space with mental health, in yoga, with many different types of clients and individuals. But yes, I teach middle school yoga. One of the many things I do is I teach middle school yoga at the Willows in Culver City, which is an awesome creative school for young individuals, and just feel really grateful for the opportunity to bring these positive coping strategies such as mindfulness, meditation, and yoga to students to help set them up for success. Because no matter what it is that I'm teaching, I'm always getting or trying to get people to prioritize their mental health just as much as they do their physical health. And when I was in middle school, I didn't have education around yoga or mental health. And so I think when we give kids these toolkits, they're able to handle whatever life throws at them. It doesn't mean it necessarily takes pain or fear or worry away, but it allows them to be set up for success so they can ride whatever wave they're given.
I knew nothing about yoga in middle school. I will tell you that definitely. First time I experienced yoga was actually in college because for my accounting degree in the business school, I had to take some phys ed course. And so I looked down the list. I'm like, yoga. I'm like, all right, that sounds good. So I signed up for yoga and the instructor was incredible. Like she literally taught us how to just like calm our mind from like racing all the time. And I actually learned how to sleep from this yoga instructor because she gave me the tools that I needed to just stop my mind from racing and learn how to relax my body. And I still use that today and I can fall asleep almost immediately using the skills that I learned in college.
But that's the thing, like they're effective and they really translate into so many different areas of our life. And that's awesome that you got to a place where you were able to quiet your mind so you could fall asleep. Something I like to make sure I really reinforce is that, when you practice yoga, when you practice meditation, sometimes it takes a while to get to that place where your mind can really quiet. And sometimes it doesn't at all. You still do it and there's chatter, but hopefully my hope is that if the chatter was up here, I know we're on a podcast, but I'm lifting my hand high. If it was up here, it just brings it down a little bit.
Yeah.
It's constantly about that evolution towards moving to feeling better. So what does that look like for you? What can you do to help practice that?
I love it. Very, very effective. You also embarked on a journey to discover life's true purpose. And from your research, you actually developed something that you call the 5 principles of purpose. So what are these 5 principles of purpose?
So I don't think I mentioned this, but I mentioned my mental health conditions coming up in my college experience. But what happened is, because I wasn't able to vocalize that I was hurting and needed help, I suppressed everything that I was feeling. And everything that I kept inside of me just kept growing and growing and growing. So I didn't have a moment where I was manic and ended up in a psych ward. It was more of small daily choices that maybe weren't in my highest good because I couldn't handle or deal with life. And then cut to, I was 25, 26, just got out of a toxic relationship, romantic relationship, and I ended up becoming homeless and sleeping out of my car. And it was that moment where I was like, I am educated. I know I'm smart, I'm talented, I'm a light, like I have all of these qualities. How did I get here? And so, again, mentioning the hindsight is 2020, like it all made sense. It was really a breakthrough moment for me, but I needed to take control of some area of my life. And mind you, I was staying with friends at times, sleeping, couch surfing, but there's also a lot of shame and stigma with that as well. And I felt like I was a burden. So sometimes it was easier for me to just resort to maybe an unsafe situation, like staying in my car, than having to ask a friend to be like, hey, I need to sleep on your couch tonight. So I created this project where I interviewed over 50 women on success and purpose and leadership, because mind you, like I'm living on the West Coast, my family is on the East Coast. My family didn't know what was going on. I hid a lot from them. And that's the thing with mental health conditions. Like a note that I got is like, oh, you're 5'8", you're blonde, you're cute, you're fine. Like, you're fine. And really, I was like, not fine over here, not fine. But I created this project because I needed to take control of something. And so I interviewed all these women. And after I was done with the interview process, I was like, there's a pattern here. They all come from different demographics and backgrounds, but they're all saying the same thing. So what is it? I need to figure this out. And I recognized that they all possessed a beautiful sense of self-acceptance and self-worth. And I didn't have that at the time. So my mind was like, what do we need to do to get that? And I looked at what they were practicing and what they were doing. And a lot of these practices were mindfulness-based practices. So then I started implementing them into my own life for my own healing journey. And I saw they started to work. I was like, this is pretty incredible. So once that happened, I then started to pitch this idea of self-acceptance through these 5 tools and prioritizing your mental health into schools in the LA area, being like, your students need to listen to this. Mind you, this was a couple years ago when I had, this was a premature idea. I didn't even have a PowerPoint. So I don't know why like Santa Monica High School allowed me to come in and talk to their kids, aside from the fact that I had a lot of passion. And in that process, NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the West Side chapter, found out what I was doing. And they were like, hey, these are positive coping strategies in the mental health space. Would you please come do education work with us? And I was like, sure. I was kind of at that moment in life where, when life shows up for you, you just kind of say yes to it, even if you don't know what you're getting into. That's what that door was. And then I decided to walk through it.
Wow, good for you. I mean, that is just an incredible, incredible story. I also watched your TEDx talk and I thought it was really good. You talked about this story where you tried surfing on one of the coldest days on the West Coast, so much so that you needed like the most insulated clothing possible to get into the water. What did you learn from that experience?
What a memory. Well, I just have to point out, I've been on the West Coast now for 14 years, which is a long time. That's almost half of my time on this planet. And I've definitely tried stand-up paddleboarding before successfully, but I've been so scared to try surfing. So I finally, like mid-pandemic, last November, decided to take a leap and just take my first surf lesson. And yes, with a 4-3 wetsuit, the thickest, warmest wetsuit possible. I was like, why did I decide to do this in like July? So yeah, I went out and I actually stood up for the very first time, not on my first try, but during my first lesson.
Mhm.
But what I realized is when I got knocked off my board time and time again that I didn't stand up, I was like, wow, this is really a greater metaphor for life. This is life when you are held under, because you get knocked off your board and the ocean is just so vast and you realize how small you are. And fighting and resisting getting knocked off and trying to get to the surface actually works as a disservice to you, when it's really best to surrender, to let go, and trust that that wave that just took you down will also allow you to pop back up. And I just felt like that was a life lesson that could be applied to so many areas in our life, because gray is really just, it's like the intersection of being present and like your to-do list when it comes down to it. And typically in these spaces of gray, like it doesn't always feel good, or we don't know what's next, and it can feel really uncomfortable. But when you do learn to dance confidently in the gray, as I like to say, and that was the title of my TED Talk and now my podcast, where I discuss gray spaces with other people, and you can lead with an open heart, you can find your footing even in the midst of the chaotic wave, and know that life is working for you and a force greater than all of us is really here to support you.
Wow, you've got some incredible metaphors that came from that one experience. That sounds like a book in the making for sure.
It definitely is.
That's awesome. I love it. So you mentioned that you're a mental health advocate. You're an educator with NAMI, Westside, Los Angeles. So explain to our audience a little bit more about what NAMI is and what do you do for them on a regular basis?
NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We are the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization. It's been around for over 40 years. And one of my personal missions is to make it a household name, so people know that what their resources are available to them and they don't necessarily have to find it in crisis. It's kind of set up like our government system. So NAMI National, based out of DC, there's NAMI at the state level. And then there's over 600 local affiliates across the country. And like I said, I'm affiliated with the Westside chapter. So we specifically focus in the geographical surrounding area of West Los Angeles. And we have so many programs. We go into schools to help destigmatize the conversation around mental health and offer positive coping strategies. That's called Ending the Silence. We have classes. I teach basically like mental health 101 class with them. It's called the peer-to-peer class. Excuse me. I'm a support group facilitator as well, which is a weekly check-in that people can hop on Zoom, and just regardless of whether or not you live with a mental health condition, just a safe space to feel seen and heard. I'm currently not facilitating a group right now myself, but there are groups that are running almost every single day.
Thank God for
And they
NAMI.
also offer programming for families. And I think it's so important to touch on that as well, because even if maybe you're not living with a mental health condition, but a family member is, like, you're still impacted. And it does involve everybody. And so it's important to take care of yourself so you can show up for your family member.
What a blessing. Free resources and so needed in these communities. So proud of the work that you're doing there. I mean, the college students that I'm working with right now, they are under a tremendous amount of stress right now. And you teach holistic, positive coping strategies, which is kind of a perfect match for the college students. So what's your advice in terms of students learning how to develop their own coping strategies?
I'm so glad you asked this. I'm so glad you asked this. That demographic is my favorite demographic to speak to, first of all, just because it hits home for me. But 75% of mental health conditions will come up for a person between the ages of 18 and 24, regardless of whether or not your brain is wired to get one or not, simply because of all of the life transitions. And so when I do speak to college students, or if there are college students listening to this, one of the things I like to focus on is developing a mental health toolkit. And basically, I like to view toolkits as your coat of arms, because it roots and it grounds you. And when practiced with consistency, it really works in your favor, in my opinion. And I also like to use the metaphor of a wave. Like, life is like a wave. It's up and it's down, and so much is uncertain. And we don't know what life's going to throw at us. But the one thing that we can control to the best of our ability is our response to situations. And so I view mental health toolkits as, gearing you up so you can show up as your highest self, but also respond appropriately in situations in your best interest. And so for me, that looks like movement. Movement is a huge, huge part of what I like to talk about: physical movement, movement of your mind, movement of your soul, meditation, breath work, breathing, journaling. Those are my three go-tos that I, practice myself, but also love to talk about.
I love it. And that's important. I also think about our listeners who are typically fraternity and sorority students. Really the fraternity house, the sorority house should be the safest place on campus, because you should have eyes and ears on everybody in the chapter in that house to know that there's a problem. Maybe a student isn't going to class for a week, and you're like, wait a minute, you haven't left the house in a week. Like, what is going on? Why are you not going to class, right? So in your opinion, what are some of the warning signs that college students, whether they be fraternity men, sorority women, whoever, what should college students be looking out for in their brothers, sisters, and friends to know that we might have a problem here?
Well, I just want to clarify, I'm not a medical professional. I am an expert in my own lived experience, and I'm trained under a lot of programming with NAMI. So I just want to point that out as my disclaimer. But I do know, you just mentioned one, like somebody not getting out of bed for a week, for 2 weeks, or even, getting out of bed for small things, like a really intense sense of hopelessness or despair, really high highs, maybe with manic behavior, and then low lows, really secluding, isolating oneself. Hygiene is another. A lot of times people stop taking care of themselves because even the thought, and I know this just from my work in support groups, of like taking a shower seems overwhelming and like a challenging task. And that was never necessarily a thing for me, but I was in a space where doing laundry was overwhelming. Mail, like I had mail piled up here. I couldn't open it. I couldn't open it because I was like, I have to face this. And something else I wanted to point out, like those are warning signs, but as fraternity brothers and fraternity or sorority sisters being in these spaces, if you intuitively feel like something's not right with someone, check in. Like, ask somebody how they are doing. It's a really simple question. Like, ask how are you? But then give them the space to answer, to not answer, but don't try to give your opinion. Like, ask refrain from giving advice, refrain from trying to like fix the problem, because a lot of times people just want to feel seen and heard. Mm-hmm. So I think when we're able to just create a container for someone to express themselves, maybe not express themselves, that's just safe, is a simple yet effective way that we can really check in on a loved one.
Yeah. And I think even just digging a little bit more and asking how they're feeling too. Yes. I mean, when you say like, how are you doing? You and I are conditioned to respond saying, yeah, I'm fine. You'll say that no matter what is going on around you. So you got to like dig a little bit sometimes.
You do. Right? And I'm glad you pointed it out, because I'm in a space where if someone asks, how are you? I'm able to say, I feel this way, but it is important to add the feeling to that because we don't identify our feelings. Like actually a lot of times when I teach at the school, I do a check-in. I do 1 through 5 with my students. 1 being like anxious, worried, fearful, all the things that we don't necessarily want to feel. 5 being like rested, inspired, creative, in my flow, aligned, and then 2, 3, 4 in the middle. But I think I emphasize the check-in process because it forces you to acknowledge where you're at, knowing that it's not permanent, that whatever it is, good or bad, will move through you, but it allows a starting point for you to then take steps forward to handle whatever is happening.
Yeah, I really like that. And you're kind of hinting at that brain continuum, right? Where, we're moving all the time and this thing
Yeah.
fluctuates throughout the
Yeah,
day, throughout the hour, right?
for
So
sure.
we're all over. And so I think the check-in is really good because that's going to differ depending on when you ask the question
Yeah.
for sure. I like that a lot. Once you recognize that you have a problem here, let's say with another college student, with a fraternity brother, or sorority sister, how do you start that conversation with them to try to get them help?
I think it starts with the how are you feeling?
Mhm.
And then again, refraining from giving advice, unsolicited advice or opinions. Step 2, in my opinion, would be to find a trusted either adult or medical professional, someone that you can turn to. Realistically, like I believe kids and teenagers and even college students, they're going to turn to their peers first of all. Like they're not going to necessarily always go to an adult. So it's like you have to create a support system for one another and kind of look out for one another. And if someone does confide in you, then gain their trust and help get them to a place, a safe place, a medical professional, like I said, a trusted adult where they can then vocalize what's going on.
I like that a lot. What resources are available for college students? You're aware of college campuses, you know what's there. Where should they be plugging into? Where are places for them to go?
I think it's dependent upon the university.
Mhm.
I definitely think it's dependent upon the university and what's available. NAMI is a wonderful resource just in general. All of their programming is free, from their classes to their support groups. I actually just started a Facebook group for college girls. It's a peer-to-peer support group. So little plug there that, yeah, College Girls Guide to Confidence. That's happening. And then having people like myself or, come in and speak. Like, I think teachers and just people in general who have conversations that you may not necessarily have thought of plant seeds of inspiration. And you don't know if those seeds will be, blooming and flowering necessarily in college, but it at least gives people the tools and allows a moment of reflection to acknowledge where they're at and be like, oh, I see myself in you. That's how I found out what I wanted to do. I was at this program with Oprah's Super Soul sessions at UCLA when I was like 25 or 26, in the midst of everything that I had mentioned that was going on. And Glennon Doyle Melton came out and she shared her story. And what she was able to do through her personal story in that room and make people feel, I was like, that is what I'm going to do. I don't know how, but that's for me. So I think just, encouraging sororities and fraternities to participate in offsites and get different individuals from different backgrounds and perspectives to come in and share their stories, because storytelling saves lives. It actually does. And I'm getting published through my mental health mentor on that in the new year. So
Good for you. I can't wait to check
Yeah.
that out. And thank you so much for sharing. I think this has been just so helpful. I think the more that we talk about it, the better we're going to be. So I appreciate you sharing all of this. I think this is just incredible food for thought. And speaking of food, we do love good food here at the Fraternity Foodie podcast. And you live in Santa Monica, which
I
again, I
do.
mean, you choose the most beautiful places on earth. That's what I'm learning about you.
Yes.
You go from Pennsylvania to Santa Monica.
Yes, to the beach.
Okay. All right now.
To the beach.
So where do you go for great food in town in Santa Monica?
First of all, I love that you made that connection because I do a coffee connection with all of my things.
Uh-huh.
So I have this slogan and it's become my life motto: get your coffee, get your day.
Nice.
But I love good food too. I grew up in a house with good food. The irony is I don't cook. So
Oh, no.
I grew up in an Italian family. Don't ask me how. I'm like, somehow I miss that gene. But I appreciate what happens around a table with food and the love that's shared in the process of that. But if I had to recommend my most favorite restaurant, hands down, it would be Great White in Venice. They've recently opened their second location on Larchmont in Los Angeles, and they're expanding to a third on Melrose. So find Great White. It's an Aussie cafe, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, coffee. They have it all. Get your Great White, get your day.
That sounds absolutely amazing. So when I'm out on the West Coast, we're going to hit Great White together.
Done.
And
Done.
you're going to tell me what to order. You're going to like walk me
Hands
through this whole
down.
process.
Yes.
I love it. This is going to be a lot of fun. All right. So if our listeners, if they want to connect with you, if they want to book you to speak on their
Yes.
college campus, where is the best place for them to go and connect with you?
Connect with me on my website, meetbritt.com. That is MEET, Britt, BRITT.com. My contact info is on there to reach me for speaking. Follow me on Instagram handle at meetbritt, MEET, Britt, BRITT. I have a podcast, Dancing in the Gray, that's on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, most of the platforms. And yeah, please connect with me. Like, I genuinely love these topics and these conversations so much, and I really believe in it. And I know that comes with the experiences that I've had. So, I just like to pay it forward and love to connect with people. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Britt, you are amazing. To all of our listeners, please like this interview. Please share it with other college students on your college campus. And we hope to see you on another episode of Fraternity Foodie. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yes, we'll see you next time.